Hello everyone, and that exciting news has dropped: a new Nintendo Direct. I must say, on a personal note, it's a terrible time for me since I'm extremely busy with work, and so this is going to be a very quick video just to talk through some of my general thoughts about what we might expect to see. So let's just think about the kind of announcements that they'll be looking for first. They need to fill in several different slots. We know what the June game is. We know what the July game is. I do think it is reasonably possible, I'm talking, 30%, that they might drop another June game as a shadow drop, if not to take away the bad taste of everyone want to Switch, which does sound like something they're not entirely pleased with, but also just to give the June lineup a little bit of a perk, give the Direct something special to spark if they don't have a heavy amount of games for later in the year. Apart from that, they're definitely going to want to announce their September game. They are almost certainly going to want to announce a game for October, and probably they're going to want to announce a big November game. So that's 3 titles that they're going to have to reveal at this point. It is usually the case that they announce something for the beginning of the following year, and I think that'll be a 4th game. I think it's probably unlikely at this point that they will have a December game, given that there's no evidence that they're going to have a particularly heavy holiday lineup, and the previous holiday lineups have not included a December game reliably. So we really need to be thinking, what are those first party slots going to be? September, October, November, and also the beginning of January. Certainly we know there's going to be some very big DLC coming, and we can almost guarantee that the Mario Kart DLC will get a feature. That's got to be a 90% high prediction. I think there is a decent chance they will show Pokemon, although it might be hived off to its own Direct. So that's going to be a sort of 70% prediction. And also in the 70% range is Splatoon 3 DLC. I think the good thing about putting Splatoon 3 DLC later in the year is that it could really be a powerful showcase for the Nintendo Switch Online system, which, as the Mario Kart waves roll down, they're going to find that the Splatoon 3 is going to be really useful to them in terms of pushing the online service, which they're going to want to keep maintained. That tricky time around October, that anniversary of when people signed up for the expansion pack, that's when they're going to want to try probably to keep people on board. Now, apart from that, you've got to think, what kind of games are likely to come up? Well, 70% chance at least there's got to be a Mario title. It has been a year since the last first party Mario release. That's the longest gap since 1998, a huge amount of time. There is a lot of hype around Thousand Year Door, and I do think it seems pretty plausible. I'm just not sure if this is the juncture. I think they could either shadow drop it now for June, and that would absolutely work, or I could see it being released in maybe February, but I couldn't really imagine it's likely they'll have 2 Mario games in the holiday window. So either Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is going to be their holiday game, quite possible, or if they've got a second game, a second Mario game on the boil, then I suspect Thousand Year Door wouldn't need to be released now. It could be something that could be announced in a February Direct. If there is a game this holiday, there are, of course, 2 possibilities. One is Mario Party, and the other would be a new 2D Mario. Now, I've talked about these in separate videos, so I'm not going to go into them in too much detail, but my hunch would be that although ND Cube are overdue a new title, remember they released Clubhouse games in 2020 and they released Mario Party Superstars in 2021, and normally they release a game every 18 months or so, it's not necessarily the case that they'd be up for a new Mario Party just yet. Having said that, the Mario Party games are huge sellers, so you can never rule it out. As for a 2D Mario, although there's a lot of hype around this, and I'm excited for that hype, I do think there's a very decent chance we do get a new 2D Mario game. Let's just remember, the same team that developed Pikmin also developed 2D Mario, and as it stands, we know that Pikmin 4 is coming out. It seems unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely, that they would be developing both. However, if, as is completely possible, Eighting or another different team are taking on significant amounts of work on Pikmin 4, then at that point, I do think 2D Mario becomes much more likely. As it stands, I think there is so much buzz around 2D Mario that I've got to say we're looking at about 50% chance that it is a 2D Mario game that's released. That does make so much more sense for Nintendo because it would be an absolutely juggernaut seller. And also, I can see this being the kind of game that would support multiplayer games, which means people looking to buy multiple systems, maybe multiple Switch Lites. Those kinds of players could encourage a boom in the number of people buying Switch, and especially if it's linked to a price drop. So let's say it's a 4-player game where there's a co-op mode and it benefits from having multiple people with multiple Switches. Well, then you could sell multiple Switch Lite. You could sell Peach Switch Lites and Mario Switch Lites and Luigi Switch Lites. I can absolutely see this being something that they would get a lot from. Now, I've also mentioned the possibility of an Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival game or some kind of version of that kind of thing. I absolutely do not expect that to be revealed here. If that were to be revealed, I think that will be in September for a release in October, November. The game itself would attract lots of negativity from people from the previous game. However, the hype around Animal Crossing doesn't really need a huge long cycle to push it. Lots of people love Animal Crossing, and I think if the game appeared and was tested and reviewed quickly, they would get away from any negative controversy, and hopefully it would be a quality game that people would be proud of, and the association with Amiibo Festival would disappear. Of course, there's no guarantee there will be an Amiibo Festival game, but I do think there's a decent chance that we could see one. Another big area of hype is a new Fire Emblem title. Although it might seem very soon after Fire Emblem Engage, the fact that the Engage DLC was rushed to market pretty quickly, really, does suggest that they've got something else that they want to line up. And of course, there's lots of hype around Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy Wars, and I do find that quite credible. Again, there's been so much smoke for such a long time about this game, and I believe that it was last June that they announced Engage, so I could see a 30% chance at least of an announcement of this game. And even if it's not announced, I do think probably by the end of the financial year, I could definitely see there being another Fire Emblem title. Now let's think about Metroid Prime. It is overwhelmingly likely that we are towards the end of Metroid Prime's development cycle. It's been a very long time, but it just seems impossible to believe that it's not going to turn up in the next 1 or 2 years. Now, the fact that we've got Metroid Prime Remastered suggests that Nintendo is ready after years of radio silence to start ramping up the hype cycle, to do what they call warm-up marketing, to build towards something, which suggests that it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. Now, I do think there are lots of good reasons to think it might end up being on the next console. It might not be ready for this console, and in that case, they're definitely not going to show it. But if there's any chance of it being cross-gen, if there's any chance of it being something which launches for Switch, in that case, I think this is exactly the kind of title, this kind of strong, hype, fan favourite title that would be really good right about now after Zelda. My hunch is probably it's about 50% that we see it. I think if they do show it, it will really capture the show, capture a lot of attention. It's not necessarily going to be the biggest selling game, but that's not a huge problem for them because there'll be other games that can sell big. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival would sell huge, but would not attract the same kind of positive hype that Metroid does. Apart from that, in the 30% category, I would say things like another Kirby title. I'm not talking something huge, but maybe some kind of short eShop title. Those come around pretty quickly, and although we're out of the Kirby anniversary window, I still wouldn't be surprised if there's something that's lined up. Similarly, there's lots of hype around a port such as F-Zero, and I could see F-Zero being announced. That's in the sort of 30% range. It's the sort of game that would get a bit of attention and would fill a slot for Nintendo. Another thing I'll put in the 30% category is a long-range revelation. Now, Nintendo do this from time to time. Think back to Splatoon 3, which was announced over a year before it launched. Animal Crossing was announced a long time. I know there was a delay, but it was still a good year or so before it launched. Same with Luigi's Mansion, and obviously Zelda had an incredibly long period of time before it launched. I know Nintendo like to keep their cards close to their chest. I know generally speaking they like their cycle between announcement and launch to be quite tight, but that's not always the case. And I think with their very, very big games, they like to have a period of time of about a year to 18 months to build up to them. Now, I do think there are some big games coming down the track in the next year or 18 months. So is there a possibility that they could announce one of them, or at least tease one of them now? Doesn't need to be gameplay. They could show a general teaser, just a little hint, just something that shows something's coming down the track. Remember, with Animal Crossing, we didn't see actual gameplay until much later on. Now, I don't think they will tease Mario Kart at this point. It's possible, but of course they've still got Wave 5 and then Wave 6 of the DLC, so it feels like they might be sort of undercutting themselves if they do that. But could they do a tease for a new 3D Mario title. If they are doing a 2D Mario game this autumn, this winter, then I definitely don't think they will. But if there's not a major Mario announcement, then I think there's a strong chance that we could see some kind of hint, some kind of tease at the next 3D Mario title, even if it's over a year away. It's probably likely they'll want to keep these things close to their chest, but I'm putting that at a 30% chance, either Mario or it could be a different title, but I think really the kind of major title they're going to want to tease a long way ahead, we're probably looking at Mario. Going down into the 10% category, the really unlikely ones, there are a whole bunch of different games which could be put into this direct, but are not necessarily hugely likely in themselves. So we are overdue a new Tomodachi Life, and I do have a video coming out soon about Tomodachi Life. I think it would be a big seller. It was a pretty big seller for 3DS on the quiet. There are some issues with it, but it seemed like the sort of game that could be pushed forward, and the development team have been quiet for a long time, at least the internal development team, which is the same team that does things like Metroid Dread, which we're obviously working with external studios. Alongside this, I don't think there'll be anything for Zelda. There is, of course, possibility of Tears of the Kingdom DLC, but I have to say, the more I play Tears of the Kingdom, the less convinced I am that DLC is likely, although maybe I'll save my thoughts on that for another video. I also don't think it's likely there'll be another Zelda announcement so soon after Tears of the Kingdom. They're going to want Tears of the Kingdom to be a major driver of sales this holiday, and so it just doesn't make sense to me that they're going to announce Wind Waker or a 2D Zelda just yet. It feels way too soon. I also think it's pretty unlikely that we'll hear of anything such as a new Ring Fit game. I think that's another thing that is reasonably likely for this holiday, but it's not the sort of game that would be announced this far off, probably. Usually with those sorts of games, they announce them within a few weeks, and then they release them with a kind of a separate hype focus. It's not really a core fan game to the same degree. Might be different with Ring Fit because it really did spark a big appeal with lots of people, and so they might want to prioritize it in a June Direct. But I'm going to put that more in the 10% range. And another thing that's going in the 10% range for me is a new Warriors game. If you think about the cycle of Warriors games so far, we've had 2 Fire Emblem Warriors game and 2 Hyrule Warriors games on the Switch. Now, the gap between the last Hyrule Warriors and the last Fire Emblem Warriors was about 18 months. Well, we're coming up for that 18-month mark this holiday, so it's possible there could be another Warriors title. There have been a lot of them, but I don't feel like it's time that we'd have another Fire Emblem Warriors game, and I certainly don't think there's going to be another Hyrule Warriors game, so that's why I think it's in the 10% range. If there were to be another Warriors title, I could absolutely see something like, for example, a Xenoblade Warriors title being released. Clearly, Koei Tecmo and Nintendo have a very strong relationship, and so it's completely possible they could put another one out. I don't think it's probably quite the time yet, and that's why it's a lower prediction than it would maybe otherwise be. So that's a very quick overview of where I could see the next Nintendo Direct going. And as always, this channel aims to do research, measurable, accountable forecasts, so you should be able to look back and see if my prediction ranges match up. Apologies again that this is a very quick and cheerful video, but hopefully it is interesting to you. Please drop a like and please subscribe if you are new to the channel, because I've got lots of other videos going into different things, including a video on this holiday season and what I would generally predict to show up. So I'll put this video up on screen right now. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. See you soon.